Hello, welcome to another color and chat with me. Working in Inky and Ivy and Inky the Butterfly. Doing my best for today, and I kind of want to talk about words. Sounds like a funny thing to talk about, I'm sure, but I had a moment today with, we'll say, an associate of mine, where it really made me think about how the words we use matter. And I don't just mean in like the way that people normally talk about that, like how, you don't use the word hate, it's a strong word, or things like that. I mean how we specifically ask for something or phrase things, and how those choices impact the perception of others and how we come across and things like that. So in this particular case, the person was asking me why something wasn't done. And they phrased it as, why isn't this blah, blah, blah? And my immediate instinct upon reading that question on the Zoom message that it was sent at was this sort of like feeling that I was being chastised. And I had to think about that reaction for a minute. Like, why? Why am I feeling that way? Like, what about this interaction is making me feel like I did something wrong when I know that they had done nothing wrong? And in fact, I really had no information about the thing that she was asking about in the first place. So I couldn't have done anything wrong. And I started looking at it, and I realized that if it would have been me, I would have asked the question as more of a do you know thing. Like, do you know why? Rather than why isn't. And started thinking about that and wondering, is that just my preference for communicating? Or does that really actually have an impact on, let's make it a little messy, on how things are perceived? And so I messaged my partner and asked them how they perceived the two different things. And they were very much in the same mindset that I was. One very much comes across as a demand, and the other is more inquisitive and just hopefully you will get me where I'm trying to go, sort of a thing. And I think that that demand feeling is what led me to feeling chastised. Is why is this person demanding this information? So it just got me thinking about how requests that we make, questions that we ask, even just the way we greet people or things like that, how that really impacts. Sorry for pausing in the sentence there. Impacts like how someone responds to us and how we are perceived. And I wonder if the person who I was interacting with had any clue that they were being perceived in that fashion, as sort of abrupt and demanding and making people that they were interacting with feel chastised. Because I, for one, and this sort of goes back to my last video, spend a lot of time, probably too much time, analyzing how I come across in the world. And I can't imagine, I can't imagine because I've been there, approaching something in such a fashion as to give someone that I was hoping to have a good working relationship with, at least, that sort of feeling. Like, I would want them to feel that I was collaborative and not looking for them to feel that I was finding fault in their work. Because I know from experience that it feels really bad when others find fault in your work, when you are doing your best. And that's not to say that constructive criticism doesn't have its place. It absolutely does. And I think as a whole, we need to do better with constructive criticism and being receptive to it. But there's constructive criticism, and then there's just people communicating in a way that makes you feel like you did something wrong without any understanding of what that was, right? Because when you criticizing constructively, you are sort of filling in that information to say, like, I understand this is what you were going for, but this is what came out, or, you know, you provide actual feedback. It's criticism after all, but it's constructive. It's given with the goal of improving. Um, just being critical, on the other hand, is a whole story. So I'm curious. I would love thoughts from those that see this. Do you see a difference in those two phrasings? What are your thoughts on the words we choose and how different, just small differences like that, the difference between a do you know, a do you know why versus why wasn't? Like, does that make a difference to you, or is that just my neurodivergence coming out and hyper analyzing the exactitude of speech? Because I'll be honest, it's a thing I'm well known for. Sometimes to the utter annoyance of those in my life, though I'm sure they would deny it. Because they hate to admit that I annoy them, even when I do. Having a lot of misbehaving pens today. But I think a lot of this same feeling does relate back to my last video, and that social anxiety and thought process of how do my words resonate, and the differences in how much thought and energy I put into what I say, versus maybe what others do. And but also on top of that, how I perceive others' reactions and the conversation around me, that maybe I am overthinking that sort of otherness. Another example of this is after recording that last video, I was feeling kind of critical of myself. I felt like it was very rambling. I felt kind of disappointed in how I came across. I thought, to myself at least, that I didn't convey my points as articulately, stumbled over that one a little bit, as I had intended to. Um, and that's the thing that happens sometimes, where I have these really great thoughts in my head, but when I try to articulate them in a verbal manner, I sort of lose my train of thought, and it just sort of becomes very rambly. And that's kind of what I saw or thought was happening last night. Then I went back and I watched my own video, and I realized that I actually was way more coherent than I thought I was. And that was helpful, because I was definitely beating myself up last night. I still posted it, obviously, but I was definitely having this moment of like, why did I bother with that? Everybody's going to think that I'm just this blubbering moron who couldn't make a point. And I think some of that sometimes just comes down to the talking and hearing yourself talk. So I realize my thoughts are kind of wandering, but that's what chat with me kind of does. And I usually bring the points back around, but anyway, I think sometimes when you hear yourself speak, and I don't mean like listening to your recording of voice, because that's a whole different disconnect, but when you are talking in it like this, talking without response, without a whole lot of pause for reaction, you start really becoming aware of how your voice sounds within your own head. And that is challenging in a lot of ways, especially if you don't like your voice, or you feel like you sounded weird, or were dealing with, in my case yesterday, a bit of brain fog, and thought that that was being conveyed more in the message that you were attempting to project. I guess What's a good word for it? Convey. I don't know. So it is, again, words matter. How we respond to words matter. I had a whole exchange with a family member one time around this topic too. Um, the idea that how do I want this? Do something different. The idea that this family member had always said to me might not have the impact they thought it had because of how I perceived those words. And again, in this case, I am aware that I was probably being very literal about their words, but perception matters more than intent in communication because the person you're speaking to has no idea your intent at the time that they are perceiving the communication. Um, so if they perceive it a certain way, you explaining that that wasn't your intent will not alleviate any damage that might have been done by their perception being skewed. And that's not to say that you shouldn't ever explain your intent. It might help them learn for the future how to understand you better. But trying to explain your intent as a way to excuse any harm that might have come from the communication is negating the fact that they were harmed by the communication. And that's almost like gaslighting, but not quite. But it's not really an apology, right? It's not letting the person feel that you understand and feel bad that words you said did not carry the message that you were hoping it would. I think about words a lot. I always have. Um, I remember when I was a kid, can't remember what grade this was, probably middle school, maybe. Um, I, um, I had to do a report, and I don't remember what the specific prompt for the report was, but my overachieving little butt decided that I wanted to do this report on the origin of language. However, I didn't mean like how man started speaking and developed language skills and writing and all that other stuff. I meant more like entomology, but like on a broader scale. But there's no such thing. There really isn't. Because every word's origin is unique. Like, we know that there are Latin based words and French based words and all that other stuff, but you can't really do a report on that topic. So I did end up actually doing a report on the origin of language in so much as going from cave drawings and all that stuff to the different like development of language to the future, which was supposedly going to be Esperanto. Never happened, obviously. We all still speak various languages and have language barriers and all that stuff. There is still no true universal language that we're all taught and all that other wild hopes and dreams. But I guess even back then, I was always very curious about why certain words were chosen over others, how they came about. Why, to this day, people choose to use which is another. I probably spend way more time than I should thinking about things like that. Think about that with all kinds of things, like the names of things. Sometimes it's a benefit. In my job, I have to analyze and interpret lots of regulations. So nitpicking the words there is an important trait. But I know, for instance, that my partners, those I love dearly, would rather I not be so rigid about my interpretations of their language choices because it has led to a few debates about what they said versus what I heard. Getting back to that whole perception thing. So it circles back to the original story that I told, because as I said, I do tend to bring my points back around somehow. Of was this thing with this associate more of a case of my perception of her question, or truly that her question was phrased in a combative manner. And I would love to hear other people's thoughts on that. I would love if my pens would write when I want them to. But I think it's hard to know sometimes where perception issues begin and true issues with communication are at hand. Because, like I said, while perception matters, and I would hope that this coworker, associate, etc., would be receptive to hearing that their communication style created some concerns and some struggles. in that scenario, while my perception does matter and does have a place, I can't, even with the family member, I have no control over how they communicate, what they say. I can express if there's a miscommunication, I can express any issues that might arise from the words they choose. Um, but if it's not a perception thing, if that really is a sort of common feeling with a difference in how something is phrased, then I feel like in this particular case, there's more of a coaching opportunity than when it's something more personal in how I perceive it. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody but me, um, but maybe it does. Hard to say. I know that's so helpful. But I would love thoughts from anyone who wishes to share them, um, because I think it's a very interesting topic. Keep debating where I want to put this color. They want, yeah, we'll make it shield color. It's a good shield color. Also, while I'm at it, um, there is currently a poll up on my page. I'm curious as to people's thoughts about uh, how much, if at all, of my Twitch streams you're interested in seeing on here. I do hope to eventually be able to stream on YouTube, but I am a fair amount of followers away from being able to do that. So, sorry, subscribers, YouTube, not Twitch. So in the meantime, I can definitely share the videos from those streams, but I would appreciate the input as to how you would like to see those, if you would like to see those. Reminders that I stream Thursday nights, Saturday mornings, and Sunday afternoons, at least for the moment. We'll see how that goes, how that changes as my school schedules more. If I get, 2 weeks off between quarters and things like that. So everything is, those are currently set, and then in a little over a year when I'm done with grad school, maybe more. Who knows? The future is wide open and as of yet undetermined. So I'm gonna finish coloring this gemstone right here. And then I think we will close this chat out. So, again, hit that thumbs up if you liked it. Subscribe if you want to see more. Find me on Twitch or Instagram. The links are in my bio. And I hope this was at least entertaining, whether it be the coloring content or the random ramblings of my brain. Have a great night.